Yes, it's Thyroid Thursday today. We're going to talk about thyroid, and I'm really excited. This topic, though, you guys, is so complex that it a little bit overwhelms me. So bear with me today. Now, look, before we get started, welcome. I'm so glad you're here today, and I hope that you get some value from this morning. So please ask questions. Love, love, love when you guys ask questions, make comments because it helps everyone learn and it gives me more to learn about when you do so that we can help more people. So your questions help a lot of people. Keep them up. All right. So let's start with I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm a woman, just a woman, everyday person like you guys. I got really sick and I got a lot better after the medical community basically failed me, after the medical community wasn't able to give me answers. I was able to find some answers on my own. And then, as a result of finding something that worked, I started understanding insulin resistance. I started doing more research on what insulin resistance is, why it matters, and what it's doing to our bodies. And that led me to understanding that all of these things are linked to insulin resistance. Does insulin resistance cause all of them? No. Does insulin resistance negatively impact many of these, if not all of them? Yes. So thyroid is one, and thyroid is a big, bad, good, complicated subject. So here's the thing. Take the information that I'm giving you today, take it to your physician, your endocrinologist, hopefully, and ask them questions and see what may be happening with you and why you're struggling. Now, I'm going to go over some things later in the live that are going to explain why some people do the system that I do and they lose just tons of weight. And yet another person who's doing the system just as perfectly as the first person and watching their carbs and doing all the right stuff is not losing weight. We're going to explain that this morning. So hang out and we'll talk about it. Now, I want you to understand, for me, getting your insulin resistance under control is not all about weight loss. Okay. I'm more concerned with people starting to get healthy, starting to get their overall health under control, because when you do that, the weight will start to come off anyway. I think we have a bad model right now, a misled model of we're so focused on the weight loss, to hell with the rest of our health. And yet, when we do that, the weight always starts to come back and you end up with more and more problems. So let's start shifting from weight loss focus to health focus and understand, when you understand your health and the mechanisms inside your body, your weight is going to naturally start coming off if you're doing the right things. So address the health first, the weight comes along. How about, can we agree on that? Because I'm a little bit different from other people who are out here talking, oh, weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. I want people to lose weight if that's their goal, but I also want you to be healthy first. So we're going to dive into thyroid and insulin resistance. So the question is, I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler alert. We're going to talk a little bit about thyroid. We're going to talk a little bit about insulin resistance. And we're going to talk about how they interplay together and what's happening in this battle of insulin resistance and thyroid, and why you're left feeling so sick, tired, and overweight from it all. So the answer is, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? We can think about insulin resistance and thyroid issues pretty similar. So there are some of us who are predisposed to having thyroid issues. I'm one. There are some of us that are not necessarily predisposed, but through a number of actions, not just excess glucose, we start to become insulin resistant, and that triggers a thyroid problem. And now we have hypothyroid and insulin resistance duking it out for who's controlling your energy better or worse, I should say. And we're going to go over all of that. So insulin resistance. Let's start with thyroid today. Let's start with thyroid. So thyroid is a metabolic regulator, right? It's telling your body, the hormones from your thyroid are telling your body how and when to use energy, basically. So feeling sluggish, feeling tired, or feeling so hyped up and you can eat anything you want and you're running around and nothing seems to bother you. They're both different ends of thyroid spectrum. Your thyroid was removed because of a goiter. Grandma Gloria, I'm sorry to hear that. So now you're on some thyroid. We're going to talk about this. And we're going to talk about it in relation to what can happen for you now. Okay. So it's now even more important. You understand, Gloria, that you have got to keep your insulin under control. We're going to go over some of that. So I'm not going to talk about all the thyroid hormones because I'm not an endocrinologist. So I'm going to talk about the three primary thyroid hormones that you're going to see on your blood work. And then there are some others that an endocrinologist should look at if he's looking for figuring out what's going on with your thyroid. So I see a lot of questions coming in, you guys. Thank you. Let's talk about take iodine with hypothyroid. So all of these you need to be careful with. Genesis, I'm going to tell you, I take some iodine now and again too. I've been feeling a bit iodine deficient. So what I'm going to tell you with iodine is, you just like any other thing, you can overindulge in it. So be careful. The way I like to do iodine, I don't generally do it sublingually. I do it right here on my wrist. And because it's going to absorb into the bloodstream better there. But what the other thing is, if I put that on my wrist and within a minute that iodine spot is gone, it means that I'm low on iodine. If after a couple of minutes that iodine spot is still there, then it means that I may not need as much iodine. So it's a daily thing for me. Put a drop on. If it absorbs too quickly, I put another drop on. If that one stays around, okay, now I've got enough iodine, I'm not going to take more. If that drop absorbs quickly, then I add another one. Probably about 3 drops of iodine is what I do. You want to find a really good grade iodine for this though. But yes, iodine to support your hypothyroidism, absolutely. Just be careful with how you do it. We're going to get into some things with hypothyroid, thyroid medications, and what happens when you take too little or too much. And you can do that too. So just because you have hypothyroid and you've been given a medication and you start feeling better, don't do more of it. Do exactly the amount you're supposed to do, because we're going to talk about why. So, all right, let's dive in. The 3 thyroid hormones I'm going to talk about today, and one of them doesn't even come from the thyroid, is TSH, T3, and T4. And I said that in reverse because I want to really say TSH, T4, and T3. And here's why. TSH is a thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a messenger to tell your body to produce, your thyroid to produce T4. So T4 is an inactive type of thyroid. It's like on the ready. It's the reserves. It's okay. We need more thyroid. TSH is coming out, converting and making T4, not converting, but making T4. And I can't, triiothyroidine is the T3, doesn't matter, T4. So that T4 hangs around, and then as your body needs energy, and it's going to cue you to turn that T4 into T3. So the T3 then is the part that gets into the cell and starts giving you actionable energy within the cell. When the doctor is looking at your thyroid hormones, they should be looking at all of those. Now, from my understanding, again, I'm not a doctor, from my understanding is, those thyroid hormones, there's a range, not because you're steady state. I hope you understand this by now with hormones. Your hormones are never like, this is the level and then here we go and this is what it is. And if we deviate, we're wrong. No, your thyroid, your sex hormones, all of your hormones are continually going up and down depending on the needs of your body. So you may have a thyroid draw one time and your TSH may be a little bit high, and maybe your T4 is a little bit low and your T3 is high or higher in the range. And the next time you go in, it's all jumbled around and your T3 is lower in the range and the TSH may be lower in the range, but the T4 is really high. what your doctor needs to do is be able to decipher what those differing levels of hormone mean and the actions that are happening inside your body. And this is why you want to go to an endocrinologist for your thyroid, because that's what they specialize in. So sometimes you may have a low TSH because your body's not telling you you need more thyroid. Is it bad to be on the lower end of the spectrum? No. Maybe it just means that you've already produced enough T4 and the TSH can take a break for a second. Maybe your T4 is really high, but your T3 is low. The T4 is on the ready, but your body just doesn't need more T3, or it's unable to convert the T4 into T3. There's a number of things that can happen. So you really, I'm becoming of the belief that it's really difficult to start understanding a person's thyroid issues by just one blood panel. I think a doctor needs to be able to look at your blood panel throughout time and see what's happening while they're trying to help you with thyroid. So T3 does a lot of work in your system. So I'm going to go over some of these things right now between T3 and T4, because those are really the ones that are people are most concerned with. Now, how to reverse T3, I don't know that. I'm not an endocrinologist, so I'd invite you to have that conversation with your endocrinologist. I'm here to link up insulin resistance and thyroid and help you understand how these two things interplay together and may be causing some of your metabolic issues that you just can't seem to figure out. And it's not about just looking at one. We need to pay attention to both. But I specialize in how to address the insulin resistance. So that's where I'm at. I'm sorry. I wish I was an endocrinologist and could answer all those questions for you, but I'm just not. So I want to be really clear about that. Now, the thyroid hormones. First off, let me check and make sure that I don't have questions over here, because sometimes I get this all covered up and I can't. Okay. So your thyroid hormones really, as much, if not more than your insulin, regulate your metabolism. Okay. So your metabolism, or your base metabolic rate, is really governed by this thyroid. So a healthy thyroid level helps you increase your base metabolic rate, meaning that you are eating normal amounts of food, you're getting the right amounts of energy from it, and at a resting state, you just have this is where your set point is. Then you add activity and whatnot. But thyroid can help increase that base metabolic rate, the rate at which you're using up energy. So, but hyperthyroidism means there's too much. And so you're burning up too much. And I know I've been hypothyroid most of my life. I had a good friend I worked with, and she was hyperthyroid. My stepmom was hyperthyroid, and they both struggled. Like, they could eat just about anything they wanted, but they still had their own health issues because they were not able to take up insulin in the way they should. And we're going to talk about that. But that hyperthyroid, too much thyroid, then leads into Graves' disease. Somebody mentioned Graves' disease. And it's just, your body can hurt and your brain can be overwhelmed from hyperthyroid just as much as hypo. I don't talk about hyper as much because it's not one that I suffered with. I suffered with hypo. So hypothyroid is that reduced rate of metabolism. So hypothyroidism is reducing your ability to use energy correctly and efficiently at the cellular level. And we're going to talk about how all this interplays with your fat, your weight gain, and all of that in just a second. So thyroid hormone has a lot more to do with our bodies than we oftentimes think or give credit to or even look at. When I was told I had thyroid problems, I never looked at what does that mean for me? What is going on in the cellular? Who does that? Okay, I didn't, but I do now. So, but it also, thyroid hormone regulates your lipid metabolism. So how you utilize fat. So too much thyroid, too little thyroid really changes how your body's able to use fat. And there's some more interesting things about fat I want to bring to you today that I learned by listening to Dr. Bickman. I listen to more doctors than Dr. Bickman, but he's the one name that's ingrained in my reality, right? Good morning, Jim. So it also regulates your carbohydrate metabolism. So your thyroid being off is changing how you metabolize lipids. It's changing how you metabolize carbohydrates. It's changing how you store or break down fat. So it has everything to do with your weight and your energy. But it also increases your protein turnover and ability to use protein. Low thyroid levels makes you more insulin resistant at the muscle, and it makes you less able to utilize protein. So now you're losing more muscle with hypothyroidism, and that's a problem. We need to hold on to every bit of natural muscle we have. It's one of the things that keeps our metabolism working well, because those muscles that we should be using every day become the most insulin sensitive in our body when they're being worked. So that means all that insulin that's coursing through our veins, all that sugar that's trying to be delivered, the muscles can now take it in when they're sensitive and when there's enough muscle. This is why they always talk about muscle burns more fat than fat. And it's just true, because muscle is actually burning that fat, right? So having more fat and less muscle is creating more fat. Having more muscle is helping you reduce the fat. And thyroid starts to play into how you can build and maintain muscle. So it's really important on that edge too. And it's not something I think that most of us even think about for the most part. So thyroid also plays a big role in the heat and the mitochondrial function within your body. So you're hypoglycemic without diabetes. Genesis, we can talk about that in just a little bit, because I love to talk about this. Hypoglycemia and insulin resistance and diabetes are all like just cars along a train. Okay. So if you're hypoglycemic and not diabetic, start dealing with your hypoglycemia now, because it will become diabetes later on if it doesn't get addressed now. We'll talk about that in a bit. I want to finish up with the thyroid and make sure that I've gotten the questions answered. Okay, so we're going to go back to the TSH, T3, and T4, primarily the T3 and the T4. Why are they different, and what's going on with them? Well, your T4 is a pro-hormone. That's why it's that inactive state, right? It's a pro-hormone. So it's there at the ready to be converted into the hormone that we're really utilizing within the cell. But we need that piece there. It would be like going, because, and this is part of my life, right? I'm painting my kid's house. So it would be like me showing up to paint and not have any paint to put on the walls. T4 is like that bucket of paint waiting to be put on the walls. Okay. So T4 is doing a lot for you, even though it's doing very different things than T3. When we look at the numbers in your blood panel, you want to make sure your doctor's understanding these and addressing the questions that you have about your metabolism and your thyroid and insulin resistance. So this hormone also affects your base metabolic rate, but it affects your heart rate and your digestive function, your brain development, and your bone development, T4. So if you have too little T4 and it's out of range, you're starting to put yourself at risk for all of these things: muscle, bone, heart, and none of those are good things to be at risk, right? So, but it also maintains normal reproductive function in both men and women. So again, T4 is important, but here comes T3. So now when we're needing cellular energy and we have this T4 floating around, the body's like, hey, we need that T3 now. And so the T4 starts getting converted into T3. Now T3 gets inside your cell, starts affecting the energy inside your cell. And this is going to be important as we talk about a couple of things this morning with thyroid and your insulin resistance. I want to be clear. I'm just linking these two together. I can't diagnose or tell you about a number of other things because that's not my wheelhouse. All right. So T3, it is the active form of thyroid. It does increase your metabolic rate and your oxygen consumption. With low thyroid, you're having less oxygen to your cells. when you have less oxygen to your cells, a lot of things go wrong, including the fact that they become more susceptible to cancers, and you're just having low energy because those cells don't have the oxygen they need. T3 helps regulate that. T3, not getting enough T3, having some insulin resistance, now your cells are really hypoxic, not getting in enough oxygen to function properly. And T3 plays a role in that. So it also, sorry, it's the T3 that is doing more of the work with the protein, by the way. Okay, so the T3 is the piece that's just really active. And so we want to understand that. And here's the thing, your thyroid hormones, like I said earlier, are going to go up and down, and they're going to change a little bit every time you get your blood drawn, depending on what's going on with you in that moment, in that week, that time. So as you see, like one blood draw and your TSH is towards the lower end of the spectrum, and the next blood draw is towards the higher end of the spectrum, that's normal. As your body, you may have not gotten enough sleep. You may have been through more stress. You may have been through a number of things besides eating excess sugar that caused those hormone levels to change. So understand that. Those changing levels don't necessarily mean that your thyroid's not working. In fact, it could mean that your thyroid is working like it's supposed to, and it's doing this dance between your energy and the needs of your energy and the things that it produces as a result. So if your TSH is low all the time, though, then it could be that you're just not getting enough cues to create thyroid in your body. Insulin does mess with that pathway, right? Insulin also inhibits T4 from being produced into T3. So let's take a look. If we know that insulin, although it's getting energy to the cells, it's getting energy to the cells because it wants things to grow. T3 is increasing your metabolic rate enough that you're starting to be able to burn fat. Insulin doesn't want you to burn fat, it's storing it. And so if your thyroid, your T3 is coming up and it's burning more fat than the insulin wants, then we have a problem. So insulin can inhibit the conversion of T4 into T3. Now we don't have enough energy at the cell, and we're starting to have problems like fatigue and fibromyalgia and a number of the same symptoms that you have with insulin resistance. Okay, sugar is the enemy, but there's more than sugar. So let's talk about this because I just really, sorry, but I'm going to tell you, I really hate comments that are like, just do this, it will fix everything, because that's untrue. That's a lie to anyone. There's not one thing that's going to fix everything. Not even the system I talk about, not even getting your insulin resistance under control is going to fix all your health problems. So I don't like statements like that. Getting rid of sugar is actually key, but there's so much more to thyroid and insulin resistance than just too much glucose. Okay, so we're going to talk about that right now too. So stress is a huge player of cortisol, thyroid, and insulin. So it's not just about the sugar. You could have a very low sugar diet. You could be doing way too much exercise. You could be doing way too little exercise. You could be putting yourself under a lot of stress. There was some people in this complex last night that were out until about 2:30, loudly talking. So I didn't get to sleep until 2:30, got up at 6:30. You better believe that my cortisol levels are a little high this morning. My blood pressure is just a little higher than it normally is, but still in normal range. My blood sugars were a little bit higher this morning as a stress response. So it wasn't that I took in excess sugar. It had everything to do with the stress of people partying and loudly talking right next to my door all night long. Now I don't have enough sleep, and now a number of things happen. So it's not just about sugar, just about one thing, just about another thing. We want to look at all of this as to everything that can happen with it. Surgeries are trauma. Injuries are trauma. any of those things, going under anesthesia, all of that changes how your body is responding to insulin, cortisol, and thyroid. And it, even when those things are all affected, can affect your sex hormones. And it may not have had anything to do with sugar, everything to do with stress. One of the things we are starting to understand about my own health history is this. At about the age of 15, I was hit in the head with a 12-pound shot put, knocked my butt out, stone cold, done out. My brother and a friend were carrying me off the field. I thought I was walking with just my arms around them, and he told me, "No, you were not walking at all. We were carrying you." It was a pretty bad concussion. When that happened, it caused damage in areas of my brain, and that could have set off this cycle of insulin resistance, combined with the fact that back then our diets were highly glucose heavy, right? So we had a diet that was grains and fruits and vegetables primarily, and not enough protein. And then, so I already have that system set up. And then I have this head trauma. Now the trauma sets off inflammation and takes something that was manageable into something that's now over the edge. So it's way more than just sugar a lot of the times. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You're so very welcome. Peace, love, smile. She says she's really appreciate the info. And Peppy, don't ever. I just want to educate people, and I want people to open up and think. Like, I listen to a lot of stuff. I mentioned this yesterday. I listen to a lot of stuff that it's like hard for me to listen to because maybe I don't agree with them or I just don't see the eye to eye. But I want to listen to what they say so I can decipher if what they're saying makes sense, and maybe do I need to adjust my thinking. It's always good to be open in thought, right? And one of the things I've had to understand is that insulin resistance is not just all about sugar. When I started, I thought it was. In fact, if you go back to my videos from 3 years ago, it was everything was about sugar. Now, that's not necessarily it. Yes, the way the body converts sugar is going to change because of all the stress and inflammation. We're going to get into some. Okay. So do we all understand TSH, T3, and T4? So the stimulating hormone, the prohormone, or the like little holder, the placeholder, and then the active hormone. So TSH to T4, then to T3, and that's how that goes. Now, so what if all of your hormone levels look like they're okay? But you still are lacking energy. You still are having symptoms. Well, let's talk about what happens when we have trauma, inflammation, stress, and our cells feel like they're in danger because they're under so much stress. So in those cells, there's a lot of energy that's being used. When we use energy, when we convert this glucose, so it's just like your car. Let's stop for a second. When you drive your car, you put gas in, and that gas gets you someplace. But as a result of that gas going through all the mechanisms in the car to make it drive and run, you have an exhaust, right? The waste from that energy being used in the car creates an exhaust. Our cells do something similar. So when they're creating energy, there's an exhaust that's created. That exhaust, that waste, is called oxidative stress. Okay. Now, this is why we have antioxidants, because they're helping us deal with this exhaust until we get it out of the system. But in a cell that feels in danger, it's going to reduce this energy consumption within the cell, reducing the exhaust, reducing the oxidative stress, reducing the need for antioxidants as that cell is trying to figure out what went wrong and what it needs to do to heal, whatever cell it is. So there is a number of cells that may just start to shut down because of outside sources other than sugar, traumas, surgeries, uh, emotional traumas, family stress, work stress, road rage, not getting enough sleep. All of that stuff actually can link in to both your thyroid and your insulin resistance. So now we have levels of TSH, T4, and T3 that are normal, but you're acting like you're not having enough of those hormones. Or maybe your T3 is really high and your TSH is really low. Now your body's not telling it to create more T4 because the T3 is so high. Maybe the T3 is high not because the thyroid is overactive, but because the cells aren't letting the T3 into them. Maybe all of the stuff about your thyroid is working pretty well, but the cellular response has changed. So now in steps insulin resistance, because when a cell is in danger, and it doesn't want to let energy in. So remember, insulin is bringing the energy in. Thyroid is this piece inside the cell that's going to work and making the energy work, converting that glucose into energy, but also creating the exhaust that's causing oxidation in our cells. So too much in the cell is going to cause over-oxidation, and we don't want that. So now it's not letting the thyroid come into the cell, and it's also not allowing the insulin to come into the cell, because more insulin bringing that energy in means more work and more stress to the cell. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so these two things play together, and it's not always just fix one, the other gets better. Or you get over it. Definitely you fix one and the other starts to get better, right? Either way. I always address the insulin first because it interplays with so many things, that if we start to get the insulin under control, we start to get our body's response to glucose under control, we start to get our body's response for energy under control. Now we can start to see, what is there really a problem with the thyroid, and what do we need to address with the thyroid. It's very possible that you're being over or under prescribed thyroid medication, because the insulin resistance is not under control, and it's giving a false read for the doctor of what's happening with your symptoms in your thyroid. So get the insulin under control, and then if there's still thyroid problems, you can address them more realistically and more better. Okay, so when we talk about thyroid medications, this is the thing. Do not think that just because you take a little bit of levothyroxine or Armour thyroid or any of the forms of thyroid that, or a compounded thyroid that you may have been given, that if I take this dose and I'm feeling so much better, if I just take a little bit more, I'll feel even better yet. Gosh, I look at my face and I can tell how tired I am. No, so too little of that thyroid, of course, you're going to end up with those hypothyroid type symptoms. Your body's just not utilizing energy properly. When you take in too much of the thyroid medication, more than you're prescribed, more than you're supposed to have, you run the risk of making your body more and more insulin resistant as this energy level ramps up and the cells are like, no, I don't want that. So too much thyroid, it may seem cool in the short term, and it may seem like you're losing energy or losing weight in the short term, but you're going to start having weight problems later as you start causing a huge dysregulation of insulin resistance. Thyroid medication should not be messed with by you. Your doctor should be checking your labs consistently and regularly, and allowing that to be find the right dose for you. You're so welcome, Sheila. You're so welcome. Because I think it's important to understand some of these things, especially if you're suffering with them or know somebody who is, so you can understand, some ways to start getting better. Okay, I want to look at my notes because there was a couple of things I wanted to make sure and talk about, and I know I will always forget something. Okay, there's a lot of information here, but I already talked about most of that. All right, so when we talk about some of this too, let's talk about low-calorie diets, because a lot of nutritionists and people will tell you to cut your calories to lose weight, right? So that's not always the best thing to do. Severe calorie restriction. This is what happens. I have to have my notes. The low calorie increases your cortisol. So that increased cortisol then increases the insulin resistance in your muscles, and that decreases your thyroid and it starts to plummet. So, low calorie diets are actually the low calorie. I'm not talking about intermittent fasting and then getting nutrients in when you eat. I'm talking about restricting your calories to 1200, 1000, 800 calories a day, whatever crazy thing is that people are trying to tell you to do to lose weight. In the short term, you will lose weight. In the long term, you're damaging your thyroid function and you're setting yourself up to be more insulin resistant. I don't like low calorie or extremely low calorie diets because it's not doing anything good for your metabolism. And enough metabolic scientists and doctors have talked about it that we've got to stop listening to um, old information and understand the reality of what's happening. Now, Neznani, I don't know how to say your name. Red light therapy, paleo, ketogenic diet. I agree with all of those things. In fact, I have a red light therapy because one that I wear on my wrist, and then I have a whole red light bed that I don't lay in as much as I should. But red light therapy is amazing for your blood, for sure. And it can be a component of you getting better. But we're going to talk about what we need to do to address insulin resistance, like that Mack truck coming in with the delivery. We need an immediate impact for insulin resistance for most people. Those other things work great. I also use red light therapy because I've had liver damage and I've had heart damage from long-term insulin resistance that nobody caught. Okay. So there was a paper, I cannot remember the exact name of it, the influence of insulin on thyroid hormone in human beings. That's very close to the actual name of the paper. But this paper was on fat cells in humans. So this paper was taking a look at, and this is going to be informative for those of you who are doing all the right things and you're not losing weight. So listen here, okay? They took they took biopsies of fat cells from a number of different people. So we have a baseline of what a normal metabolic person should be, or person with a normal functioning metabolism. And then we looked at hyper and hypothyroid people, what was happening in the fat cells with these people. So hypothyroid, you're using up too much energy, right? You just can't seem to get enough energy in, and it can cause you to lose some muscle in that way as well. But you're just constantly overactive and just using more energy than your body can provide. And so that causes a number of complications. In these people with hyperthyroidism, what they found on their fat cells is that they had 30% less insulin receptors on their fat cells, meaning they had a 30% less likelihood of putting fat on in any state. So not only are you using more energy, but you're unable to put fat on. You don't have the same receptors on your fat cells. Those 30% less fat receptors are also less insulin sensitive. They're less good at binding insulin to the fat cells. So you're just not getting the fat delivered into the cells, and you have a hard time putting on weight because it just is dysfunctioning. That's hyperthyroidism. When we look at hypothyroidism, the interesting piece is this. Hypothyroid people have 70% more insulin receptors on their fat cells. Now, does that make them a bad person, that if they sit down with the same plate of food, that hypothyroid person is going to lose weight before they even stand up, and the hypothyroid person is going to put on weight before they even stand up? Same plate, relatively same energy needs? No, it's not your fault. Your receptors have 70% more insulin, your cells have 70% more insulin receptors. Why does that matter? Remember, got to go back to insulin is delivering sugar energy into the cell. You have to have the insulin to unlock the cell to let the sugar in. So in a person with hypothyroid, that's 70% more likely to happen than a person who doesn't have this issue. Now, when we're inundated with sugars and eating too often and all of this stuff, now we're having insulin receptors that maybe they're resistant throughout the rest of the bodies, but in a hypothyroid person, your insulin receptors are just like having a party. Come on in. We're really sensitive to you. We like you. We want all this energy, and your fat cells start growing. You start getting bigger, and you're like, but I'm not eating anything different or doing anything different than anybody else. No, maybe you're not. Maybe it's all at a cellular level. And so the best you can do is understand that. And your life is probably going to be different. You're probably going to have to be more active. You're probably going to have to watch your sugars more. You're probably going to have to do some things because your body's different. And we all need to understand that our bodies are all different and that we need to start looking at the approaches that fit for us. So, hypothyroid. Not only do we have 70% more receptors for insulin on our fat cells, making us more prone to bringing insulin and converting that into fat, the binding rate of insulin to the receptors was much more increased. So that these insulin receptors on these fat cells had so much better receptivity that they were all that I would envision it as like almost like a magnet sucking this in, where this insulin is just like getting in that cell so fast, your fat cells just blow up. Hyperthyroid people, that signal, that receptor is not as open. It will open, but it's not going to open as quick. And they have 30% less than a normal person. So about half as many insulin receptors as a hypothyroid person. If you eat too much fat, what kind of fat are you eating? Are you eating the seed oils, the vegetable oils, all of that? Or are you getting in olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil? Eczema from eating too much fat is probably highly processed industrial fats that are causing that problem. Doctor told you you'd be dead if you had which problem? Take 112 levothyroxine for thyroid cancer, have no thyroid. Doctor does blood work every 6 months, okay? Um, if you don't have a thyroid, you have to supplement with thyroid, but you have to be tightly regulated in the thyroid. It should never be 112. Just this is your prescription, and that's it for the rest of your life. He should be getting your labs in and adjusting your thyroid consistently, and that's going to be necessary for you for life. And you would be dead if you weren't getting in thyroid supplementation with no thyroid, now that they've removed it, if that's what you were talking about. Um, okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. It's not where I normally like to go with the thyroid talk, but I thought it was worth bringing up some of these issues that because I didn't know them all, I figured that maybe everybody else didn't understand these either. And it's good information to know as much as you can about your thyroid in your body. And those of you who are doing the system, those of you who are doing keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, and you're working out at the CrossFit box down the street or whatever, across town or whatever, and you're working as hard as everybody else and you're still not losing weight, it's probably a thyroid problem. A little bit. Sheila says, is there a way to heal the metabolism and alter and balance the receptors, or are we just stuck with what we have? So when we talk about hyper and hypothyroid, that's genetic. So meaning you have that propensity. It's not that you're stuck with what you have. You have to learn to work with what you have. So like my friend who was hyperthyroid, she actually, and the recommendations are very similar. I think what they did for her was they had her up her protein, they had her up her fats, they had her reduce her sugars, because that sugar is giving so much quick energy and the thyroid is using it up. The more she ate grains and sugars, the more she lost and the more she started looking emaciated. So for her, she had to reduce sugars for the very opposite reason, but it all meets midline. So some of the recommendations are going to be the same. Yes, sugar, we should be getting rid of sugar. But it's just like I should be cleaning my house more. We don't all do it, right? So we should be getting rid of sugar. And that should be a focus for us, is to get rid of refined sugars, boxed sugars, that stuff. We're talking about your fruits and vegetables, fine. We're talking about reducing refined sugars. You want to get in more protein. Most of us are not getting in enough protein. Most people that think they're getting enough protein, when I talk to them and we break down what they ate and I calculate how much protein was probably in that, they're only getting in 30 to 50 grams of protein in a day, and that's just not enough. So, Sheila, keep the sugars down, keep the protein high, keep the fats high, good fats, not the industrial fats, avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, tallow, lard. Those things you should be eating more of. I mean, we shouldn't be eating too much fat ever, just like we shouldn't be eating too much of anything. But when you're focusing on fat, you want to focus on those fruit fats, not nut fats. Okay, and then limit your carbs. So with all of this, what we need to know is that if you have a thyroid problem and you need to be on thyroid medication, then please do that. How are you going to support that and stop this vicious cycle of thyroid causing more insulin resistance? The more insulin resistant you become, the less your thyroid works. So remember that piece. If your insulin resistance is getting worse because of your thyroid and you're not managing your insulin resistance and it's getting higher, it's going to make the thyroid worse. Then it comes out, makes more insulin resistance, makes it worse. Now you can be having a losing battle even with your thyroid medication. So for me, the big piece is address the insulin resistance. Do what you can at home, right? Address the insulin resistance. Clear that out. Manage it. And boy, ladies, gentlemen with hypothyroid, and ladies are far more plagued with hypothyroid than men, by the way. You're going to have to always. So this is, are we just stuck with what we have? Yes, you will always have to be more careful than somebody else in addressing your insulin resistance. So Sheila, that's somebody like me too. Hypothyroid and all of this, you guys, I appreciate the questions and spurring me to find more and more information, because it really helps me on my health journey too. But yeah, we're just always going to have to work harder. Can we get there? Yes. Are we going to get there as easily as somebody with no thyroid problem or with a little bit of hyperthyroid? No, we're not going to get there that easy. And we cannot. And you guys, this is, what do they say? Comparison is the root of all evil. Stop it. Stop it. Address you, where you're at, what your body's functioning with. If you know you're doing the right things, then continue doing the right things. If you know you're doing things that are harming your metabolism, stop it. It's that part's on you, right? Now that you know, you can't say that you don't. So addressing insulin resistance. Let's talk about that, because that's going to be, for me, the big key. Work with your endocrinologist, start getting those thyroid levels functioning properly. But as you get insulin under control, your thyroid's going to start functioning more midline, more normal for both hyper and hypothyroid. I wish I would have ordered more of the apple spice, because I mix it with our matcha, which kind of has a green apple flavor, and man, do I like it. It's really, really good. Okay, so how I reversed my insulin resistance and started getting my health back, which is what I want you guys to focus on. Look, I never claimed to be skinny. Like, I know there's a lot of people on here who have just lost so much weight, but they almost look emaciated to me. But I make no bones about the fact that I have some excess weight. I'm very aware of that. But this hypothyroid, a number of other things that have happened with me, That's part of it. So now, am I working harder than the next person, than the girl, than the person on my team who's lost 160 pounds in less than 2 years? Yeah, I have to work harder than her. Is my body going to respond the same as hers does to all of this? No, it's probably not. And no, it just absolutely isn't. Nor is your body going to respond the same as mine. Does hypothyroid affect the LDH level? Um, I don't have a direct answer for that. But again, here go the little hamster wheels in my head. So when you ask me that question, I immediately start to think about hypothyroid and what we just said about it causing insulin resistance, and insulin resistance causing a change in those levels. I don't have a direct answer, but to me, it makes sense that there would be a link. Let me take a look and see what I can find. And maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about autism and neurological disorders and how insulin resistance is interplaying with them, and how this getting insulin resistance under control can help people. Anxiety, depression, autism is going to be a big one tomorrow because people need to understand it. More and more of us are being diagnosed and recognizing that we have it, and why. Why is autism more prevalent today than it ever was? Is it just because it wasn't diagnosed before, or is there an increase? We're going to talk about all that tomorrow. Now, what helps me with my autism, my ADHD, my high blood pressure. So my blood pressure this morning, I said it was a little high. It was 127/72. So the systolic was a little high. It didn't concern me because I knew that I got very little sleep last night. On a normal day, my blood pressure is going to be about 110, 114/70 in the morning. And that's amazing for somebody who had really high blood pressure for 30 years. I'm not on any medications. I don't have any prescriptions that I take. I don't have, my son is, we suspect that my son has Asperger's. He's definitely on the spectrum. And yeah, that's an interesting form of autism, right? As Asperger's is a whole other thing. And I've known very successful people who had Asperger's as well, but we'll talk about how this can help with that. The apple spice is discontinued. It was a limited time flavor. Now, my hope is they trialed a bunch of different flavors of the Balance last year. There were some great ones. I had a stick or two of lime left, I just realized. But they did this, and now if the response to that was enough that they could justify doing that full time, then yes. So I think that's what they're doing, is just trialing to see what other flavors do people really want. The quicker they sell out of this trial run, the more likely it is to come back and possibly even be just a permanent part of our flavor lineup, our flavor profile. Okay, so right now they ran a batch, right? They made an estimate as to how popular it was going to be. They ran a batch, and when that batch ran out, we're now out. It's not something we have in production all the time. I'm hoping they'll put it back in. And if you, I will just continue telling them that people want apple spice, because to me, I love the lemon ginger, but the apple spice is amazing. So and I like it hot or cold. All right, so the system that helped me, the tea that they're talking about, you guys, this tea that I'm drinking in the morning, it helps me with mental clarity and energy, physical energy, mental energy. It has antioxidant, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory properties in it. It has neuroprotective gene expression in the brain, meaning we're getting messages between nerves in the brain much better. So the tea is doing all of that. Um, the tea is also helping you with glucagon-like peptide production in your own system. So instead of injecting a peptide and artificially raising it, what the tea is doing is allowing your body to produce this peptide hormone on its own, and it can increase that in the production of that peptide hormone in your own body by 70% with this particular tea. So it's keeping you satiated. It's keeping you in a fat burning state. It's giving you all these other great properties, plus a great panel of vitamins and minerals in it. This is what I drink every morning. This is what you see me sip on every single day, day in, day out. And then I drink it all the way up until just before I go to bed. This is a 40-ounce mug. I will drink this and multiple of these waters today. I aim to get in around a gallon of water a day between the liquid that's in here and just plain water. So I don't know that I'll have another 40 ounces of our drink today, but I will definitely be getting in more liquid today. So the tea in the morning, the tea in the afternoon, because in the afternoon is when people start to have that slump in energy that's giving them an increase in hunger and this wanting to snack. That afternoon slump, that afternoon I need a Kit Kat bar or whatever, that is because you're so just dysregulated with sugar. Your body is needing energy and it can't get that glucose into the cells. It's burnt through what you had, and now you're just needing more energy. And so the body says, hey, you know that sugar thing you do, let's have some of that because that'll give me energy. But if we just stay on the path of the intermittent fast and keeping that snacking down, allowing insulin to come down, then we can start to be more regulated with insulin and more sensitive to sugar and get the energy we need. Our body has plenty of energy in it. It's fully capable of going that pace without all of that. The tea helps you with hunger and getting through the energy slump and that hunger craving in the afternoon. Before you eat your biggest meal of the day, you're going to have a fiber drink. It's a pre-meal drink that has 7 different fibers, soluble and insoluble. They help slow down sugar delivery into your system so you're not having the insulin spike. They help with your gut microbiome. They help with a number of other things. Plus, this helps you feel full before you eat, so you're less likely to overeat. That's it. 2 real food products got me off of 13 different medications, got my blood pressure to a normal range with no medications, saved me from having a knee replacement. I've had 2 hips and 1 knee replaced, and the last knee that was supposed to get replaced didn't have to. My teeth and gums don't bleed anymore. My hair grew in. I still have some pieces that are growing in from a few years ago when it was all falling out. A number of things happened, and this is all I do every day is 2 teas a day, and this fiber drink before I use it before I eat anything. You just go to my link in my profile. There will be a link to my page. There will be a link to get a hold of me, to talk to me and see how this can help you. Either way, you just go to my profile right below the red light symbols. There's a link. Okay, that person got blocked. Okay. When do I drink water with LMNT? Good Lord. I was telling my daughter I need to become an LMNT rep. And now I love it. I just ordered more LMNT for myself. Element. These electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium. When do I drink these? Because I'm drinking so much liquid all day long, I don't often want to add just a separate drink. I have the orange salts, and a lot of times I'll put the element right in with my fiber. So this fiber that I drink, actually I need my element today. Let's just do this. So this has nothing to, well, everything and nothing to do with the protocol. The element is just getting in electrolytes. So the balance, the fiber that I like to drink that has reversed the health issues for me. Can I get the right end? I'm always trying to open it from the wrong end. Just tear the top off, pour this in. Okay, so there's my fiber. Now, asking about the element. So this is the orange salt. I just ordered like mango chili something, and we'll see how that one tastes. But the orange salt, it's going to make my fiber saltier, but it's also going to be delivering a lot of really good electrolytes that I need. So I just put this right in. This is what I do. I just put it right in with my balance. Now, is it pleasant to taste? No. But is it worth my health? Yes. So now salt and balance in here. That's it. And then I'll just drink that down. Now it's going to make the balance a lot saltier. That packs a punch. Now, you may or may not be able to, it's like having a Sour Patch Kid. Okay. So you may or may not be able to handle doing that. If you do this, the element in water, you can do it at any time of the day. I oftentimes like to do it just before bed because I've had so many injuries that I am prone to leg cramps. So the system stopped most of the leg cramps, but I like the element before bed. That's when I drink it. Okay. So you guys, if you want the system that's helping people get over their insulin resistance and helping with the thyroid, we're going to talk about how it links into all these others tomorrow. Just go to my profile link. I'll put it in again for Facebook and whatnot. Oh, come on. Let's just copy this. Can I? And we will see you tomorrow. I just received your, or yeah, that was the orange. I did the citrus last night. I did a little trial pack that had some different flavors in it. So I think it had citrus, orange, watermelon, and there's another one. But they're all, it's just super salty. That's all. And you know what? It may be too salty for me because I may be catching up with my sodium needs and I may have to skip a day of element. Okay. You guys, will see you in the morning. If you're interested in the system, please reach out to me. Let me know. Ask me questions. Can this help? How would this work with what I'm doing? I love to answer those questions. Okay, we'll talk to you guys in the morning. Autism, I'll try and throw in something about Asperger's. And we'll talk about how this problem of insulin resistance is actually, they're starting to link into most neurological disorders. All right, have a great day.